spend with Jesus. Sweet is the presence of the Lord, and sweet is the way He gently takes me by the hand and helps me down the road that leads to home.
Hey everybody, my name's Terry Henry and I'm the pastor at Liberty Christian Church in Liberty, Illinois. And today I've got a couple of guests with me. I got my good friend Gordon Blankenship, who is the director of Lemoyne Christian Service Camp in Tennessee, Illinois. And then I also have my son Corey, who's here because he's been a camper. And we just kind of wanted to come to you today and talk to you about the importance of church camp and the effects that it can have on students and for the kingdom of God. I know for me personally, growing up, my church background wasn't the best. We didn't always go to church, but my grandma and grandpa always made sure that I got to church camp in the summer. My mom and dad made sure I got to church camp in the summer, and it was there that some local pastors invested in me, and it was at that camp, Flaming Spirit Christian Camp, where I came to Christ and decided to go into ministry and all kinds of great things because there was a place I could go to in the summer to get away from everything else. And so when I was asked to host this show, I immediately knew I wanted to talk about the importance of church camp and get this guy here with me. Gordon, good to see you, buddy.
Yep, it is good to be with you.
Good deal. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, as Terry said, and first of all, I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here today. My name is Gordon Blankenship. Grew up in Keokuk, Iowa, not too far from here, and actually grew up at Lemoyne Christian Service Camp. And it was certainly a transformational part of my life as well. So that's why I'm so glad to have this opportunity to speak with you today.
Yeah, and we were talking before the show started, and you made comment that you've had the unique experience of running the full gamut of church camp, from going as an infant to now being the big dog at camp.
Yeah, I have. I back in 1977, my parents gave their lives to Christ and invested themselves fully into church. I was 2 years old, and the next year, both my parents were asked to attend Lemoyne Christian Service Camp as faculty, and I tagged along as a 3-year-old, just there, sleeping and hanging out and having a good time. And then I, of course, as I grew older, I had the opportunity to go as a camper. Mm-hmm. And as we were talking, I've been a camper. I've been a junior faculty. I've been faculty. I've been a parent who sends kids to camp, and still am a parent who sends kids to camp. I have been an employee. I was a SAL director, which is our student activity helper, which is how I know your boy. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I've been a minister of one of the supporting churches. I've been on the board of directors, been the president of the board of directors. Now God has called me to awesome. Be the director. And it is neat to be able to reinvest my life in something that has so positively invested itself in me.
Sure. And
to be able to share that love and that passion with others, it's really humbling to be called to that. So it is a neat thing.
All right. Well, Corey, I invited you here today for a couple of reasons. Number one, when I talked to Gordon about this, he said, we should get a camper that has been there and that has benefited from camp. And so obviously all three of my kids came to my mind, but you've had a unique experience in that you've been a camper and you've also been one of those student activity helpers. And so why don't you introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are, and we'll ask you a couple questions as well.
Well, I'm 13 years old. I go to Liberty Junior High School. I've been a camper for as long as I can remember, and I've sawed once.
You've sawed once.
Yep.
Let's see, doing a saw job, didn't you have something to do with a whole lot of cereal or something like that?
Yes, there were literally hundreds of boxes of cereal that we had to sort by expiration date. It was long, but it was fun.
All right. So just there might be some people watching this who's never been to a church camp, okay? And they don't really know what church camp is like or whatever. From a camper's experience, tell us what a day in the life at church camp is like.
It's a lot of fun. You just get to see your schedule in front of you, which I like personally, and every part is just equally as fun as the rest.
Well, let's quickly run through a day. You wake up. They wake you up at like 3:30 in the morning, right?
Thank God, no.
Right. All right. They wake you up at a normal time. You get dressed. You get around, and then you go to breakfast, where there's some good camp food made for you, right? Bacon and eggs and everything else, or cereal if you want.
That cereal I sorted.
Cereal that you sorted. There's usually some sort of devotion time or something like that. You go to some classes, correct? And classes aren't like, oh, here's homework and stuff, but it's more like, well, tell us what a class is like from a camper.
It's very interactive. You just get asked questions and you read scriptures from the Bible, and
Yeah.
One of the things that we try to do with regard to those classes is we really try to make them more like a small group type of a setting, if you will. Absolutely. Is that a fair way of describing it? To where the kids have the opportunity to interact with the scriptures, interact with the leader who's been hand chosen by our deans. The deans are the individuals that come in to lead that week of camp, and the goal is to really get the kids to figure out on their own terms how to interact with the scriptures and live that going out. Is that a good way of describing what we're doing there?
Yeah. And I know when I was a camper growing up, all the camps or all the classes that we went to for the most part were taught by adults or maybe students in Bible college, working towards those youth ministry degrees or whatever. And I can remember some of them were fantastic. In fact, I still remember some of the lessons and some of the teachers that were out there. And if you're one of them, thank you. But I also remember some of them, they were a little more academic than what I wanted to do in the summer, just to be honest. And so one of the things that, and I'm not trying to brag with this statement or anything like that, but one of the things that I've determined in myself since I've got to come back and dean and different things now is, we have students who like the academic stuff. We have students who like the heartfelt stuff. But we also have students who, they like to draw or they like to act or sing or whatever. And so when I develop a week of camp, and I know that a lot of area ministers kind of do this now too with their camps, but we like to offer the opportunities for kids to learn how to apply the scriptures into areas that they like. We might have a class that's about, putting together a skit for the week or a band or something like that. And allowing those kids to be able to choose the kind of class they want to be in. Some of them are core, you're going to go to these, but give them those opportunities to kind of develop the areas that they feel like God might be calling them to and see. And that's an awesome privilege for students.
Yeah, I really like that you specifically describe it that way as a dean, and because you always do a great job with your sessions. We do try to make sure that we hit on all cylinders when the kids come, whether it's body by giving them some exercise and getting them. With all due respect, most kids today they do struggle to be outside and to just participate in some of those wonderful things in God's creation, and so we try to get them engaged in those. So we have our disc golf course, which is a wonderful way for kids to get out and learn a new sport that is active and fun and social. We have our sand volleyball courts, our basketball courts, and those have become a bit of the central hub, if you will, in the downtime. That's where you'll find all the kids. In fact, I believe I asked my wife out on our first date underneath one of those basketball rims, if my memory serves me correctly. But we try to have all of these different things, and there's softball, there's swimming at our swimming pool, there's fishing, there's hiking, soccer. We just try to engage those kids to get their bodies active, because we know as that activates, then their minds become more open, and so the mind is that next thing that we kind of go for, and we try to dive a little bit deeper into scriptures and stuff to an extent. But really, what I love and how you described allowing them to come to Jesus on their own terms in their own way and utilize those scriptures, whether it's through art or music or whatever it is, because that's where the Spirit comes in. So we've got body, mind, and spirit all working together to truly grow that young person.
Absolutely.
So that when they leave those campgrounds, they are ready to do and live the will of the Lord.
Yeah.
And that's what we really try to do there.
And I really like that evolution of the church camp that has come to, because, going back to my days, and I don't know what Lemoyne was like when you were going through it, but I know what my camp was. And then, right out of Bible college, I became the pastor of a church, and I got on the board of a different church camp and was deaning there and stuff. But it seemed like kind of the course of the week was to lead to that big decision of, if there's anybody who wants to accept Jesus, which is great, and we need to do that, we still do that. But then it was also a call to anybody who wants to go into full-time ministry. And obviously I'm one who answered that call and did that, but I think the churches are coming better to understand today that a school teacher can be in full-time ministry if that's what they're called to do. A Christian rapper can be in full-time ministry if that's what they're called to do, and students need a place where they can go in the summer and be able to branch out in the areas that they're comfortable. Learn how to do that for the kingdom of Christ. Whatever you do, it says, whatever you do, do it for the glory of God. And there's so many ways for students to utilize that.
Well, as we were talking before, just preparing for this, we started talking about my own testimony and how I did in fact grow up in a great Christian home. Like I said, my parents came to Christ when I was 2 years old. They fully engaged in church. They created a youth, co-created a youth worship service on Sunday mornings with some wonderful families. So I grew up in the Word. I went to Keokuk Christian Academy, a wonderful Christian school that's still active and going strong and training the leaders of tomorrow in the church. My textbook for reading was the Bible.
That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned that Psalm 23 was the first thing I actually learned to read.
Oh, wow.
And my first memory verse was, of course, John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish,
even in the
but
King
have
James.
Eternal life. Yeah, it was old school back then. But through it all, having those great experiences, growing up in this amazing church with crazy Bill Hauser as my pastor, who had this fire for Jesus Christ and this passion to love and serve his people. Even through all of that and being as active as I was in my youth group and church, it was at camp where I really began to engage in my own way with God and in the ways that I could socialize. Because I lived in a bit of a small bubble. Keokuk Christian Academy was created in 1981, and I was in the first grade class. And I had 2 girls in my class with me. That was it. And so as I grew up, I was in a bubble. I was in a small group of individuals, much like some of the wonderful homeschool groups that are out there today. It's somewhat smaller in nature, wonderful and great opportunities to grow in our faith and to reach out. But I didn't have the opportunity until I went to camp to really expand my social network, if you will. And that's where I began to develop those friendships that still last to this day. Friends that I've had for 40 years that I still talk to regularly. Some I served with at the camp. But it was there also where I really began to open up to what God could do through me. If memory serves me correctly, and I don't want to mislead, but I believe my first ever testimony was at Lemoyne Christian Service Camp. I was trying to think through that, and I don't think I was ever given the opportunity until I was there. I was the guy that always sang back in the day, friends are friends forever. Hopefully they don't have to get a special permission for me to mention that name in that song. Michael W. Smith, friends are friends forever. I'd get all the girls crying and then get those hugs before I left, But it was at camp where I really began to expand my horizons of what God was going to be able to do through me. And hopefully that's how our youth today feel about that place. Would you say that
yes,
does that
100%.
What would you say is your favorite thing from the camp?
It's probably the lessons and the worship that happen inside. Like the big sermon every day and the singing around it, it's just amazing.
Yeah, the worship services are powerful, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
We try to bring in. It's funny how things change over time, because back in the day it was a guitar, hopefully a guitar,
right,
and a worship leader just a cappella or acoustical and just laying it out there. But today we've got all that modern technology, with the screens and the lighting and the wonderful sound system that God has blessed us with.
I can remember it used to be a big deal to be the kid chosen to switch out the overhead for the overhead projector.
Yeah,
like you wanted that job at night.
Raise my hand, man.
Now you've got a whole crew up there, running whatever. But
it is funny how God changes the technologies and allows us to utilize those things. Absolutely. And yet worship is still worship. And it's so fun to see those kids with their hands raised high. In fact, on our registration packets and stuff, when you register online, the background is a picture of our kids. There's the purple lighting up there, and you got a praise team up there, and you got the kids with their hands raised, worshiping God. And there's a reason for that. I picked that because to me that's one of the most powerful visuals of what the camp does.
That's the heart.
It brings the Holy Spirit into the lives of the youth. And it's so neat to see how that is transformational.
And it's amazing because in our brotherhood, I guess I'll put it that way, I get to speak at a lot of the different churches around and go to a lot of different events. And I usually, if I'm speaking at a place, I usually stand in the back of the building until it's time to go up and speak, because I just like to kind of read the room for the night and get ready. And when the worship happens in our churches, and I don't mean to offend anybody, so if you're a part of our brotherhood, I'm sorry, but usually it's fairly reserved. The guys and gals just kind of stand there and sing. Some of them might have their arms crossed or their hands in their pocket. And even our students are like that. But when they step onto that camp, those defenses are down.
Yeah.
And when the band or the guy or the gal or whoever takes the stage to lead that worship, those students are absolutely engaged in what's going on. I noticed that. You always have one or two that maybe likes to goof around, or whatever, but for the most part, the students that are there, they're engaged in that. They listen to the speakers. I know Corey, well, all three of my kids actually, but Corey's here, so we'll talk about him. I know that I can talk to them after camp is over for the week, and they can tell me some of their favorite things that the speaker said. Now, he goes to the church that I preach at every week. I can ask him 20 minutes after the sermon, what did I say? You spoke today?
Well,
you were there.
Okay,
maybe that's a stretch. But would you say that those messages are powerful at camp? That
yes.
Maybe you're a little more engaged?
No offense, but yes.
No offense taken, and I get it. I was there, but let's go back to your day. You get up, you have your breakfast, you go to classes. There's missions, right? Mm-hmm. You get to learn about something that God is doing somewhere in the world. It might be someplace local where they're helping students or whatever. It might be somewhere halfway around the world. And with technology today, you've been in a couple of weeks of camp where maybe you've been able to Skype with a family that's serving in Africa currently, or we had one last year that was Australia, I think, going to Australia, something like that.
We always have one from Russia.
And you get to see those people face to face. I mean, literally, what kind of experience is that for you?
It's better than if you would just learn about what you're giving money to, which sounds crude, but it's just really the only way to put it.
No, I understand.
It's really good.
Sure.
It's more engaging.
Yes.
Gives you the opportunity to really experience what you're giving towards, right?
So I'm going to kind of put you on the spot. Have any of those conversations kind of stuck with you? Like, do you remember anything from one of them that just kind of stuck with you over the years?
No.
No? But you remember the faces?
Yes, I remember the faces.
Sure.
Do you remember any specific missionary or mission country that you really have enjoyed learning about through that process?
Australia.
Australia.
Last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a beautiful place. We need to go there sometime.
Let's go.
All right. We'll raise
I think
funds for that
we're done
somehow.
here in about 10 minutes. Anyway, then you go to lunch. Okay, so keep in mind that his wife cooks at Lemoyne, which is where you go to camp. What's the food like at camp?
It's really, really good. It's got a hint of cafeteria food, but in a good way.
I like that description. A hint of cafeteria food, but in a good way.
Then after camp or after lunch is when all those recreations take place that Gordon was talking about. And I got to tell you, Corey, you are pretty lucky, or blessed maybe is the better word, because I can tell you when I grew up in camp, right, and we're going all the way back. I was born in '76, so I'm just like a year away from you or whatever, but in the 80s going to camp, I can remember our cabins. The guy in the bunk beside me woke up one night and woke us all up. He was just screaming because there was a raccoon sitting on his chest that had got into the cabin, and we got to go swimming one time a week. We all had to get on a school bus, and they drove us 30 miles to the pool, and we had an hour and a half there, and that was it. And so recreation was kind of whatever we could make up, game wise and stuff. And of course now camps have come a long way. There's the pools. There's with Lemoyne, there's the pool. There's the rock wall. There's archery. There's
the team building course.
The disc golf you talked about.
As far as the raccoon thing goes, there's secure air-conditioned cabins.
Yeah. Well, that's having grown up at camp,
right.
At Lemoyne specifically, I can tell you just a few years ago.
Yes.
Because we just built those in 2016, those new all-season cabins with storm shelters and all that. I think we'll talk about that more next week. Is that right? We're going to talk about the facilities and stuff. But yeah, the fact that I remember my last year as a faculty member at one of the weeks of camp, I stayed in Boys Cabin 1, which is currently Cabin 5. And it had no shade. And one day, it was 101 outside, and I had the inkling to take a thermometer into my cabin. And there was only faculty staying in the cabin. There were like 5 of us guys.
Sure.
It was 122 in that cabin.
Those cinder block buildings in the sun.
122 in that cinder block oven cabin.
Yes.
So you are blessed
Yes.
to have the technologies and the wonderful facilities that you have to live in today. I even remember the shower houses before we built our old shower houses that are now gone. Were actually just cinder block walls with no ceiling on them.
Oh, wow.
And cold water. And we showered in the open air, and the walls were about 6'6" high, maybe 7 foot, and you were always worried someone was just going to be peeking up over the top.
Yep.
But the advantages of today's renovations and stuff has certainly become a great asset to your youth. That's
absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, our camp that I grew up at, it was the shower was just a line of shower heads, kind of military style, so everybody was standing there. So nobody wanted to shower in front of everybody else. Everybody was wearing their swimming trunks.
Yep, we always wore our swim trunks.
You know how clean we all got.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Corey, back to the day. You have your afternoon of fun.
Yep.
And then it's supper time, and you get more of that great hint of cafeteria, but in a good way, food. And then the night comes, and that's when we turn over to worship, right? And I mean, not that we haven't been worshiping all day and everything that we've done, but this is where we focus on the singing and the message and so on and so forth. What's that experience like?
It's, like I said, it's just really deep and engaging and emotional.
Okay. So let's ask the big question. I know it's not me, but who's been a favorite speaker at camp?
If I'm being honest, I don't remember any names.
Okay. All right. That's fine. But you've heard some great messages, and
Yes.
I know that you've been able to tell me about them, and that's the important part, is they're reaching home. And then we go into night activities, and then we end at a campfire where, again, we come down to a devotion and some songs and just kind of ending the day quietly before God. And what a beautiful experience that is. So.
Yes.
So if you were I don't know if you know this, Gordy, but a couple of years ago, Corey won the Dare Writing Contest. You have to write an article.
Oh, yeah?
And he won $35 or $45, $50, whatever it was. And our church pays for most of the cost for a camper to go to camp. And there was a fee that happened to be the same amount as what he won. And he said that he had a friend that never got to go to camp, and he wanted to pay for them to go to camp.
Praise the Lord.
And that's what he used that money for. So, Corey, that's part of the reason why you're here today, is that heart, and I know that you love camp and that it touches you and changes you. Here's my question, because I'm sure that there's some people out there who have never been to church camp. Might be students, might be adults, and we're going to talk about the adult aspect a little bit more next week. But what would you say to them? Like, how would you tell them, hey, you need to come to camp because?
There's no other experience like it. Whatever the fee is, whether it be expensive or cheap, it's cheap for what the experience would be like. You can't get that anywhere else.
Awesome. And that's why those camps exist. I mean, just to change life. Lemoyne's doing a great job of that, and I know that we have people from around the world watching, and they have their local camp, and hopefully they're supporting that and being an active part of that. If they don't have a camp, they're welcome to come in.
Absolutely.
I'll go to the airport in St. Louis and pick them up and bring them up.
I do the same thing.
But it's just important for people to be able to experience that. And it's not just from the student experience, but as we mentioned, we're kind of running out of time this week. We're going to bring this back up next week. But I mean, camp is a place for the family, and
absolutely,
it's a place where family memories can be made, and camping experiences can be together, and all those things.
And hopefully, people will tune in next week where we discuss that a little more in depth.
Oh, absolutely,
and share some of the programming and the different. We've got everything from seniors to 5 years old.
Absolutely.
And we try to engage each and every one of them for Jesus Christ.
And for a couple of people in my church specifically, the last couple of years, there's been a special needs camp as well, and that's been a huge blessing to see that take place.
Yeah, God is good.
Gordy, you've got 30 seconds. This person you're talking to has never been to camp. Why should they come?
I would have to say that the reason they should come to camp is because first and foremost, I believe Christ wants them there. I believe that God has called each and every one of us into a nearer and deeper relationship with Him. And it is a place that engages them in such a way that assists them in understanding who He really is and how they can live for Him.
Awesome. Well, we thank you, and we'll see you next week.
And sweet is the way He gently takes me by the hand and helps me down the road that leads to home. Yes, He helps me down